Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Top Strategies for Recruiting and Retaining Excellence. My name is Stephanie Hurst. I'm the Member Programs Manager for the National Apartment Association. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, please take a moment to review NAA's antitrust compliance and legal disclaimer. I'll keep this up while I go over a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the webinars page of NAA's website by early next week. You'll also receive an email with a link to a recording once it's available. During the discussion, you may type questions into the chat box on your screen or into the Q&A field, and we will share those with our panel. And now I am pleased to introduce today's moderator from NAA's Next Gen Committee, Ty Jackson. Ty?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. We have an amazing lineup of panelists today to introduce to you all. And I'm just excited to moderate the conversation. And you know, it would not be like myself if I did not take part in the conversation also. Yes, I am that moderator. So today's speakers, our panelists are Alex Fortune. Alex is the Director of Talent Acquisition at Rangewater Real Estate. Welcome, Alex. We also have Jen Picotti. Jen is the President with Swift Bunny. Welcome to the stage, Jen.
Thank you,
And
Ty.
we also have Melissa White. Melissa is the CEO and Principal Coach of the Activation Coaching International. Welcome, Melissa. So it is amazing to have you guys on here. This is a jam-packed session today, and we have a lot of questions. So out of respect for everybody's time, we're just going to jump in and get right started. So the first question that we have is going to go to you, Jen. The question is, what are the top 3 data metrics that multifamily companies should prioritize to evaluate their recruitment effectiveness?
I think this is such an important question. And I think top of the list in my mind is the reach of your job listings. If you are not currently partnering HR and marketing together, you are missing a huge, huge opportunity. So often we're seeing that HR, they're just doing the same old, putting the job listing up there. But when you can bring in the sizzle of marketing, who can kind of enliven those postings, get them in the right places, bring out the personality of the company, maybe bring out the personality of the supervisors, the hiring supervisors. All of those things really increase your reach, your visibility, and your enticement. You know, what is it that you're bringing to the field to say, hey, this is where you want to be? So the reach of job listings, also speed to action. Right now, and this is based on data points that I pulled up just this week, looking at the whole first half of the year, right now, 12% of your current new employees in the multifamily industry are saying that they are not at all satisfied with the time in between viewing the listing, submitting the application, having the interview, and getting the job offer. And this is a tight job market. We are all competing for the same people. And so if you are slower than your competition, you are going to lose some amazing employees. So look at how quickly that process is from the time someone submits an application to the time they receive a job offer. See if you can shave off a week, some days, just so that you can get that offer to them quickly. And finally, and this may be surprising to some people out there, but looking at your onboarding effectiveness. So this might not seem like a recruitment metric per se, but here is the truth. We're losing a big chunk of our new hires before day 90 in our industry. We're having super high turnover. In fact, some of the last data that we were looking at, 1 in 6 new employees was leaving before day 90. We cannot afford to be having that high of a churn right in those first 90 days. And the reality is 27% of new employees in their first 90 days are saying that the training that they're receiving is not actually helping them be able to do their job. That's more than 1 out of 4 of your new employees saying, I'm here, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So look at your recruiting effectiveness or your onboarding effectiveness and really measure, are our people learning what they need to know so that they can start feeling useful immediately? We need to make sure we're focusing on skills, not just the mission, vision, and values. That's great, but do they actually know what they need to do to be a contributing member of the team? So those would be my top three.
Oh no, I love those answers. I love the way that you said sizzle, the sizzle of the company. And I love the fact that you honed in on the training. I didn't think I was going to be able to plug myself so early in the webinar, but if they need an amazing facilitator to train, call your girl Ty Jackson. And you also talked about the speed, and I love that because coaching with Melissa, I know that she always says is that speed is the new currency.
Mhm.
People, you have to be on speed, and when it takes a long time from the initial applying for the job to getting that offer letter, you've lost the best employee because it is a competitive market. So I really love that. And that's a great segue to you, Melissa, because the next question we have is how can multifamily companies create more inclusive job descriptions to attract a diverse pool of candidates?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. The job description itself isn't just about the role, but it's about the culture, the responsibilities, and the criteria that this person will have to fit. But also, it's describing who you are. Kind of look at it like a dating profile, if you will. It's like, what do you want to be best known for? What is the culture that you represent? And then when Jen talked about sizzle, sizzle is another word for the brand. We talk about the marketing, but not the brand. And so the brand of your company starts with the job description. You want to look at, and let me define brand because people always think they know what a brand is and we don't always get it right. What a brand is what do other people know you for?
Mhm.
What's the reputation of your company, using some of those statistics that you're known for from your surveys, from the employee satisfaction, include some of that in the description so it's more attractive. And then a part of your brand is also speaking to culture. They're two different things. What's the culture of the company? What's your corporate social responsibility or causes that matter, and things that the candidate can expect outside of their role that they can participate in. We see now with Gen Z, they want companies where they can align with causes and the values that that company represents. Slide some of that in there in the job description, which helps to attract this new pool of savvy candidates that we want to reach today.
Yes, I love that, putting the brand into the job description, because you're right. We read a lot of job descriptions, and even me being the AE of an affiliate, I get a lot of job postings. And when I read them, it's the same thing. I'm copying and pasting, and I can tell the same thing. But if I was out there reading it as a candidate and making a competitive choice, would I see the brand and what is that company known for?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. So, Alex, hello and welcome to your first panel. The
Oh,
next question is for you. Can you share a successful recruitment campaign your company has run and the outcomes it achieved?
yes, absolutely. And thank you guys for having me. So happy to be here today. Something that we do at Rangewater is partnering with different universities to hire fresh talent. I think that's key to getting people to learn about the industry, and even understand or know what property management is. And you can do this in a multitude of ways by, attending career fairs, either generalized career fairs or specific real estate career fairs. You can partner with the professors at the universities to attend speaking engagements, which is a great thing to do to reach that specific target audience. Another thing we've done is mock interviews with students, which is a really incredible way to build a relationship with students and help them to be successful in their interviewing and potentially turn into interviewing with your company. So we host an internship program, which is amazing. Right now we have 10 incredible interns in all different departments in our organization. And so this is how we find them, is by partnering with the different universities. And of course, our end goal is for them to become a full-time employee at Range Water in an entry level position once they graduate. A couple of other ways is by participating in nonprofit organizations. So two in particular, one is Entryway. So I'm actually on I'm a co-chair of the Young Professionals group here in Charlotte for Entryway. And then Construction Ready is another one. So with both of these programs, we have seen incredible success hiring candidates through these organizations, helping, launch people's career, getting them back on their feet after being in difficult situations and seeing them thrive, get promoted along the way. So it's really a win-win for everyone. You're filling your open position. You're also giving back to people and helping them kickstart their career.
You just made me want to do an application for Rangewater. I'm like,
Come on.
I'm going to work at the company. No, I know you said you were not a departmentalized, but the things that you said were just in alignment with the Next Gen committee and the things we were talking about, because a lot of us just ended up in the multifamily industry. So for Rangewater to be intentional about going out there to the high schools and talking about people in the career fairs to bring awareness to RPM careers is exactly what we're doing. So if you do come to Apartmentalize, you make sure you come to the Next Gen committee, because that's exactly what we're trying to do with the next generation. So amazing answer. Jen, we're going to go back to you with our next question. How can multifamily companies leverage data analytics to predict employee turnover and proactively address retention issues?
Well, if you want to look at the data, you've got to have the data. And the way you have the data is to ask the question. And there are a lot of companies out there that can be nervous about asking for employee feedback, because there are leaders who are thinking, oh man, this is a can of worms. It's only going to be bad news. And as a matter of fact, so many leaders that actually do participate and do, ask for that feedback, they're pleasantly surprised of all the good stuff they're getting. Because in general, people are by and large pretty content with their work. They're pretty happy with the people they work with. There are a lot of positive things they have to say about their company and the work environment that they're in. There are also things that are frustrating, and that's what you want to get into. So as much as I would like to be able to point and say, this is the biggest predictor of employee turnover, the reality is, once you ask for that feedback, there are three key things that you've got to do in order to reduce overall employee turnover. First of all, you've got to ask. You've got to say what's going well and what are the things that are most frustrating. So you can find out what are those good things that we can highlight. To Melissa's point about what is our culture, what is it like to experience your day-to-day interactions with this company? So those are the good things. And then find out what are the biggest obstacles, because what we tend to do as humans is we tend to listen to the loudest voice in the room. But the thing is, the loudest voice is not necessarily representative of everyone's experience. So when you ask for employee feedback, you're getting that collective experience, that collective voice, because the goal is always what's going to have the greatest positive impact for the greatest number of employees. So you ask for the feedback. Secondly, you've got to be willing to act on that feedback. You've got to be willing to pick one or two things that your employees have shared with you and said, okay, we're going to focus on this. We're going to try and make this better. We're going to improve this thing or these couple of things. So ask for the feedback, act on it. And then this is the most important thing. If you're going to actually impact employee turnover, you have to tell the employees, we heard you. We heard what you had to say. We understand this. These are a couple of the challenges. We are committing to focusing on these challenges based on your feedback. When you do those three things, you will reduce employee turnover, because they'll understand that, hey, this is a company that wants to support me, that wants to help me succeed, and they're willing to put some work into it. Maybe they're not going to solve all the things I'm frustrated with, but they're solving that thing. They're focusing on this thing. Okay, I see that we're having a conversation here. It's a give and take. It's a back and forth. It's not just me being like, oh my gosh, I can't do my job because they don't do anything for us. So it really has to be that 1, 2, 3. If you miss any one of those points, you're not going to be successful. You will have employee turnover. But if you want the data, you got to ask for it. You got to be willing to act on it. And you've got to be able to communicate back and say, I heard you, and here's what we're doing.
That not only does that align with employees, but me being an affiliate leader, it aligns with the associations.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
right in the thick of the same thing right now, sending out the survey,
Yeah.
listening to the members, and letting them know that we heard exactly what they said and act on it. And I love that because there's times that we send the survey out and then we don't do anything with the data.
Oh, and you know what happens after that? When you send the next survey, you're not going to hear from them because they're like, it was a waste of my time before. Why should I bother now?
Exactly. It makes me think about with you, Melissa, a time where we had a conversation and you talk about where you had to bring your employees in and you ask for that feedback. And you're right, Jen, when you say a lot of the times we think that the feedback is just going to be bad. And it's great feedback too, because it's not personal usually when it's feedback, but the frustrations are things that we can improve on as a company, as an association. So that was amazing. Melissa, the next question is for you. It says, what role does company culture play in retention, and how can DEI initiatives strengthen this culture?
I love this question so much. I feel like this is a tag team where Jen is setting the layup for us to talk about this. So get your pen and paper because I'm going to give you some steps here. All right. Number one, when you ask a question about culture, what is your company's definition of culture and how are you communicating that first? Because if you do not communicate culture well, you will not communicate DEI well. That's where you start. Let me give you a definition of culture, okay? There's tons of them out there because, everyone has their definition, but you need to know how to define it so you know how to include DEI initiatives on top of it. Culture is the foundation here, and DEI is something we're adding or building on top of that foundation. So here's the definition. This is from Bamboo HR. I didn't make this up. So it says it's a shared set of workplace beliefs, values, attitudes, standards, purpose, and behavior. So can you list those out as a team first when you're doing your retention? And how do the two connect? The problem oftentimes when you talk about adding DEI initiatives to strengthen the culture, you're adding something that's nuanced and new to a culture with a shaky foundation that you can't properly communicate. So I think sometimes we rush to talk about DEI before we assess, do we have the communication that Jen talked about? Do we have the infrastructure to get the speed of information out to every level of the organization? How you communicate is a part of your culture. So those are all of the things I think if you were talking about like laying the groundwork, that's the first thing you need to do before you add DEI initiatives. When you know that your culture is solid, then you're ready to add DEI on top of that, which is essentially just saying, hey, we are a safe space where we equally look for top talent in marginalized spaces. Not that I'm looking for a diverse hire because we need it, but that our eyes are open to diversity because there's top talent there too.
Yes, I love it. And I love that you speak of foundation because the foundation has to be strong, as we know, within anything in order for you to build off of it. So that's definitely great feedback. And I had my pencil and my pen out because I'm smart enough to know to take notes when the coach is talking. Yes. So, Alex, we are back to you as Eddie Perez is saying in our chat, hashtag range on. Yes. So, Alex, what innovative strategies has your company implemented to retain top talent, especially during challenging times?
Yes, I love this question and feel very appropriate. Following after Melissa, I would say really, creating that culture within our organization, and having that high sense of engagement with employees. If you have a great place to work and an environment that people want to be in, people will stay during those challenging times and they will work harder for their organization and their direct supervisor. So, at Rangewater, we do have a particular specialty role. It's our Director of Culture and Experience. And shout out to Cliff. He's amazing. Some of you guys may know him. But he really engages that diversity. He engages that life outside of your day-to-day job, helps bring initiatives to the company to allow people to give back. And I think that's huge, and that's really living out our core values, right? And if we hire people who align with our core values from day one, before even being a part of the organization, and then they join our company and they're really embedded in those core values and our culture, that's huge, and that's a hard task to do, right? Especially when you're located like us all across the Sun Belt and the Mountain West, in different time zones and different, kind of cultures within the US. It's hard to create that, but having such a specialty role at our organization, Cliff gets to focus on that and really engage those things, and help create that culture, which drives people wanting to stay with us during a challenging time. We also love getting referrals. That's huge. We have a great employee referral program, and we promote that on a weekly basis, and of course reward our people for sending referrals to us. But when you do that, that also creates, just a great culture of people who have, love working together because they referred, previous coworkers or friends or family members to our organization. So I think that's huge, as well as having a transparent job board. So, again, we promote weekly our job board to our internal candidates. We want people internally to be in places that they want to be, whether that's roles or locations. So helping them to get there is huge. And I think that people really, feel engaged, when they have the first opportunity for a job at Rangewater. So those are some of the ways I would say.
Yeah, no, those are really great ways because you're right. When someone loves where they work at, they're happier and they will stick with the company during the tough times. When you like where you work at, things can get tough and you're willing to go right in and pull your sleeves up and like, I am not leaving Rangewater. I'm staying here. And it's because of the culture of the company and because of really just caring about the employees. And that speaks to the longevity of the employees. So that's amazing. Hashtag range on as the people are continuous. Carlos is in here. Kim Yetta Keith is in here and saying, oh, so true. So yes, Rangewater must be an amazing company. So Jen, we are going to take it back to you with the next question. How can data be used to identify potential biases in recruitment processes? And what steps can be taken to mitigate them?
Well, again, if you want the data, you have to gather the data. And there has been and is currently great opportunity to conduct a DEI survey within your organization. Again, leaders can be hesitant and say, again, what are we going to hear? Am I ready to learn what there is to be learned? Is it all just going to be negative? And again, what we've seen over and over again is, yeah, there are going to be some things that rise to the surface, but there's going to be some really good stuff as well. So you got to take the good with the bad. But one of the things, it's funny, we were working with the UK Apartment Association, so over in England, and they were going to be conducting a DEI survey. And one of the comments that came in the committee is that, we hear from our employees that we look at leadership, and remember, this is from England, this is in the UK. They're like, we look at the leadership and it's pale, male, and stale, which cracked me up because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see that. I can see that boardroom. And I think the same when we look at our organizations in the United States, if we look at leadership, are we seeing a room full of people who look the same, who may be from similar backgrounds, or are we seeing diversity? And so if you have a group of leadership who they have a shared experience, this is how they know the world and how they view the world, and they might hear from their team members that I experience things differently. This has been my experience. As much as they want to be empathetic, they haven't lived that experience. So you really need to invite diverse thought, diverse people, diverse backgrounds into the room, to a seat at the table, so that we can begin to see why might people be experiencing things differently, the workplace differently, interactions with their supervisors differently, and then how do we address that? So you've got to get the data. First of all, you have to understand what you're working with. How are different employees experiencing the workplace differently? Are they things we can influence or not? If they are things we can influence, let's take steps to do that. So some of the things that we're seeing that can come up are, think about your interviewers, your team of interviewers for any given position. How diverse is that panel of interviewers? Because if I'm a potential employee and I come in and I see a panel that all looks similar and the same to each other, but I look different from that panel, how is that going to influence how I respond, how I feel like, will I fit into this culture? I don't know. But if I'm seeing a diverse panel of interviewers, then I can see, oh, I can see how I might fit in. I see that there's a lot of diversity, whether it's in age, race, gender, all of these different things. Do I feel like I could have a seat at this table comfortably? So think about who's interviewing, invite other members of your team to the interview who might not be a supervisor necessarily, but maybe it's a peer that can interview. But think about how you're putting together those interview panels. Think about your job requirements. A lot of companies are moving away from the requirement of a college degree for management positions, because what they're realizing is having that experience of coming up through the ranks can often be a way better predictor of success and manager capability than someone who may have a lot of hours in a college classroom. There are pros and cons to all of it, but they're seeing that life experience may be better suited to what we're trying to accomplish in our leadership team. And so by removing that college requirement for some management positions, you're opening up the job pool to a lot of people who maybe didn't have the opportunity, didn't have the interest, didn't have the means to get a college education, but they have the experience. They can tell you what it's like, from entry level on up, and they have a lot to bring to the table. So looking at what are your requirements? Do the requirements of the job actually make sense? And so by removing some of those things as well, but also looking at your hiring practices. I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but there was a story recently about a gentleman who had applied to a hotel, and because his skill set matched what the job description was, didn't get a call back. He changed his name on the application to a more stereotypical Caucasian American name, got a call back very quickly. We hear stories like this, whether it's home loans, whether it's job applications, whatever it might be. Not everyone understands the blind spots that they may personally have. And so if you can remove some of those things, like maybe on applications, if the initial screening process doesn't include name, doesn't include gender, some of those things can enrich the applications that are actually moved forward, and just remove even the opportunity for bias. So those are some of the things that companies can start to take into consideration, start to evaluate and see, how can we remove some of these potential stumbling blocks that people may be aware of consciously or unconsciously, so that we have a richer pool of applicants and interviewees, so that we can have a richer, more diverse workforce over time.
That was so good. I almost forgot I was the moderator, girl. You dropped so many nuggets within the things that you just said, because I see it so much, either from being on the hiring side and being directed to the candidate needs to have this, this, and that, or from hearing from friends within that are in RPM careers and looking for a job. And I know that they started as a leasing professional, been in this industry over 20 years, and they can't find a job right now. And it's like, and those are some of the biases that I see in the applications. Or even being here in Arkansas, I hear some of our suppliers like, hey Ty, I'm hiring but I can't find anybody, and then I see their criterias I'm like, well, what does a degree have to do with it? And somebody's been working in this industry for so long. So you're right. And the stale pale and male, Alex Jack, you said it first. I've heard her say it before. So there were so many great things, Jen, that you said that I'm going to have you on Talking with Ty because we have to have a whole hour by ourselves because I could go down a straight rabbit hole with you.
Let's
So
do it.
just out of the respect for time to continue, Melissa, the next question is for you. What are some effective ways to measure the impact of DEI initiatives on employee satisfaction and retention?
Well, you can't measure the effectiveness or the impact without having a baseline. So, Jen spoke very well in detail about the importance of data and gathering these surveys. So, when doing the DEI rollouts and initiative, have a benchmark, do essentially your own census, if you will. Think about the fact like we're here in the US and there is a census in our country to gather data so that you know what resources need to be allocated by city, state, and region, right? Well, what if you were to implement something like that in your organization to have a baseline to say, hey, where are the gaps? And that's really what data does. Data identifies the gaps so that you can make data driven decisions to fill it and assess, is that a resource we have internally or do we need to source it external? Okay. So when we talk about DEI in that equation, DEI can mean something different depending on which level and vantage point that employee has in the company too. Okay. You look at our industry, Jen mentioned about filling, I call it that the education equity gap, where it's like, hey, we're moving some of the limitations or restrictions when it comes to needing a degree, then that may greatly impact closing the gap on filling management roles based on experience versus education or lived experience, which does count. Now, if you were to have that conversation with an on-site team, that may be different. There may be a disparity in terms of, let's say, racial ethnicity gaps when it comes to our facilities teams or our office teams. So it really just depends on the level of where they are. And here's one other point I'll mention. Look at your survey from a regional perspective. There may be different needs with your DEI based on regions and geography. There may be a higher concentration of women that work in your company or men, depending on where they are regionally or different ethnicities. So it's really important to look at the data from the lens of what's the gap in my company? Let me have a baseline first. Partner with companies like Swift Bunny or whomever to help you identify and make an intelligent decision. But we said it at the beginning, and I'm going to pull it back up, communication. The speed at which you communicate your findings will be the equivalent of how quickly your team believe, adapt, and run with the initiative being rolled out. So I hope that helps you get a sense of what you need to do first in order to get the results that you desire on the back end side.
Yes, I love it. And you and Jen are piggybacking a lot off of each other because it's coming right back to the data. It's coming right back to sharing those findings with your people and then acting on what you find. So those are really great things that I hope companies are picking up on out there. Alex, the next question is for you. How does your company ensure that new hires are integrated smoothly into the team and company culture?
Yes, this is a great question, and it's something that I think is always a work in progress. But in my role, so I'm engaging with candidates from day one, right? So from the moment that they apply and I pick up the phone, give them a call, do a phone screening. So I'm building that relationship. One thing I love about our company in particular is that we're very collaborative. So it's not just, me building that relationship with the candidate, but the hiring manager as well. So it really starts, again, from day one, from that first interaction, that you're able to really, build that relationship with the candidate and really engage and collaborate together. So that way they're feeling comfortable coming to you even before they start working, with asking questions and feeling prepared and just easing them in. And again, as I mentioned before, during our interview process, we talk about what values are important to the candidate to ensure that they are aligned with our culture before even stepping in, right? So those are some of the ways. And as far as our onboarding process, and there's always different processes and procedures that are not the most fun but are very necessary. So we're always evaluating. So tagging in on getting that employee feedback is huge, right? We want to make sure that we're making this process as simple and as effective as possible. So always getting that feedback, always, being innovative to change and updates and making things better is key. And, having that leadership buy-in as well.
Yes, Rangewater sounds like they court their employees, which is, I love that, because it's just like when we have residents on site. And it's a process and you want to court them. But I love that with Rangewater, because we do it on site because we know that residents have a choice and they can live anywhere. But Rangewater seems to know that employees have a choice also, and making sure that the goals align in that initial interviewing process. Because, hey, I want you to know what we do at Rangewater, but I want to make sure that I'm doing what Alex is doing for her long-term goals too, so that she will stay out here and we can avoid the rollover and keep her. So I love that. In the comments, we have Kara House. She says she loves the communication piece that you guys shared. Christine Munda said, data is so valuable and the numbers don't lie. That's right, honey, they don't. The next question is for you, Jen. What trends are you seeing in the multifamily industry regarding recruitment and retention based on your data analyst?
Well, I mentioned earlier about that trend of HR and marketing really partnering up and making each other more effective. HR, they can write the job description itself and it's very like, you must have these skills, and marketing comes in and they're like, all right, let's just, like I said, let's get a little sizzle on there. Let's a little sizzle and shine. But they can really help each other. And, to Melissa's point about brand, they can really infuse the sense of brand and not only make it more visible from an employee recruitment, but also just for residents too. Residents are looking at all of that brand, those promotional things, and they're saying, is it all saying the same message? Is the way they're speaking to us and talking about their communities to us as residents the same thing that they're saying and talking about to their potential employees? So having that universal message and brand all working together. Like one of my favorite companies that does such a great job of this is Red Peak out of Denver. And they really infuse the culture, the brand, into everything they post, whether it's a job listing, whether it's social media, whatever it is, you feel that life and that vibrancy of who they are really loudly and clearly. So that is one main trend that we're seeing. Another thing that we're seeing really take off and be very, very effective is changing, and coming back to communication, changing the communication of job openings. So very often companies will send out an email, maybe on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, to all their employees saying, do you know anyone who would be interested in these open roles? With one small tweak, if instead they send out, are you or anyone you know interested in any of these open positions, changes the whole perspective, because we know that 1/3 of all current employees don't have any idea of how to progress in their development or promotion path. And yet, developing and being promoted is one of the most important things that employees are telling us about their intention to renew with their company. So they want to grow, they want to develop, but they don't know how. We have 1/3 of them that don't know how. And so when an organization takes that extra step, and when they're going out and recruiting for new employees, if they go to their employee pool first say, are you interested? Or is anyone you know interested? And the reason this is so important is it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be an internal promotion, but what it does is it helps facilitate that conversation of someone being able to say, I'm interested in that. You know, how can I work toward that? And a supervisor saying, well, you might not be ready today, but let's start preparing you. Let's start getting you more integrated into these types of meetings or this kind of training or this kind of mentorship. And they can start you on that path. But also, when an employee says, wow, the company is willing to invest in me and help me grow and develop, I'm going to bring my friends in. I'm going to bring my acquaintances in. I'm going to bring more referrals in, and you're going to grow your job pool that way. So that's something that we've seen be extraordinarily effective when it comes to recruitment and retention. They really are one and the same. And some people are like, well, we need every single person in our company to be in the exact role that they're currently in. And it's like, hey, you know, if you're not going to provide the opportunity and the development in your organization, guess what? You're going to lose them to someone else. So have that conversation, take that time, create those paths and those opportunities. You're not only going to retain more people, but again, you're going to attract more people into your organization as well.
Yes, I mean, like you said, just changing up that little verbiage saying, are you or anyone you know interested? It invites your employees to apply for it. And it makes them think, you know what, this could be a potential fit for me. And having those conversations, as Alex was saying, that they have early on to make sure that the employees' goals are aligned. And saying, you know, hey, if you're not ready right now, Jen, let's take the steps to get you to show you that I see that you're valuable and I want to invest in you as an employee.
Yeah.
Definitely will help you retain. All right. So moving on to our next question is for you, Melissa. How can leadership training programs be designed to promote diversity and inclusion at all levels of an organization?
I love this question. I'm gonna tell you why, especially after hearing that staggering statistic about a third of employees not even have an idea, about their career path. And when we talk about leadership programs, we've put so much emphasis on training, which you train skills, but you coach people. So when we talk about designing a leadership program, that's where for me, after 20 years in the industry and being a trainer, coaching was the light bulb that showed me like, wait, coaching is more of a partnership relationship to come alongside the employee and have those conversations early on, like Alex said. But it's like now that I'm having a conversation early so that you're not left behind when promotional opportunities come, it's now how am I checking in and having more checkpoints in between your review sessions to know, hey, are you primed and prepared for leadership? Is it that you're really lacking training? Or do you even see yourself? That's a coaching conversation. That's different than a training conversation. Coaching is about let me ask the right questions of you so that I understand what is your idea of leadership. I'll give you a perfect example of this. For me, I remember on site, it was you had this idea that, well, a leader and what it meant to be a regional manager was like this scary thing, like, oh, that's stressful. They always look maybe stressed out or they were pulling their hair out when it came to the property. And it's like, well, if that's the connotation of leadership, then that may not be the representation you want. Let me coach you through what leadership really is. Coaching means come alongside me, shadow the position. Let me ask questions to see if this is even what you're interested in before I put you on a path that you're not even interested in. Now, when you tie DE&I into the equation on all levels of the organization and leadership, it's understanding. I'm going to flip it a little bit and talk about the I part, the inclusiveness of leadership. Is are we including all members of the organization for potential leadership opportunities? Okay. Like Jen gave really great verbiage. Language is so important. How you say something can impact the response to the question, the response to the job post. It impacts their responsiveness in the review process, how the question is framed and asked so that you set the appropriate goals and checkpoints. So I think it's really important when we look at leadership programs. A couple of points I wrote down. Number one is what are the leadership gaps? Let's just say, for example, is there a succession plan for someone who's retiring soon are transitioning to another role, and are you planning for that early on? And the only way you would know that is if you're asking leaders at the top, like, hey, what is your career path and plan? If you're wanting to transition to a role in the next year, we don't need to wait till next year to look internally or externally for someone to succeed you in that role. The other point I wanted to make about that is selecting programs that fill that gap based on, again, those needs and surveys. So you may have a facilities manager or supervisor that's a really great leader. He's great at accountability, but you need to know if you have an accountability gap so you can raise that person up to the area of the gap. And then, like I said, measure and report back the success of that program. I'm finding that coaching is becoming even more popular because we realize leadership training is not appropriately labeled when it's more leadership coaching. Training is training a skill, but we're having a conversation about coaching people to what they want and then holding them accountable to be in that position and elevate from there.
Yes, you know that I know coaching all too well from my experience with the activation coaching. And so you're right, taking someone alongside you, and there were the things that I told you that I wanted to do, and you held me accountable for them because the skill was already there. So what I'm loving about this conversation, guys, is that Alex is our person that's on the owner operator side. Jen is our data girl. And Melissa is talking about coaching and recruitment, but the things that Jen and Melissa are saying are the things that Alex is saying that Rangewater does. And it's working effectively for them. And so, Alex, before we go to the next question with you, I definitely want to let you know you have so many people on in the chat cheering for you because Alexa is saying, woot woot, hashtag range on. Carlos says, we're stronger together. Retention starts during the interviewing process. And Kara House, love the fact that you talked about collaborating with your members early on. And these are some of the things that Jen is talking about with the data, Melissa is talking about with the coaching, but Alex is coming back and showing us in real time that these are things that Rangewater is doing and it's working. So this conversation is going so great because we're being able to see in real time how these things are transitioning. So Alex, my next question is for you. What role does employee feedback play in shaping your recruitment and retention strategies? And how do you gather this feedback?
Yes, it's a huge role, which, is definitely the theme of today, right? Is gathering that data. So we roll out different employee surveys annually to collect and analyze the data. So that way we know, where to make changes if needed and what the pain points are. I love what Jen said earlier about, the loudest person, I think it was Jen, the loudest person in the room, that they, may not be the majority in the room, right? So this is so important. We've done it over the years. I've been with Rangewater for 11 years now, so a long time. So I've seen different, employee surveys and ways to, send the feedback along the years. So that is definitely key. So we do have our leadership team and executive team review this data, and then send back, different, strategies that'll be changed to improve our company. And it's huge. I've definitely seen changes happen throughout the years based off of feedback that was provided to the company. Another key part of this is making people aware and comfortable that it is anonymous. So that way they're being transparent with their responses. So we absolutely do that and remind that of our teams often. So that way they feel comfortable to really express their true experience in order, for us to make changes and create a great experience at Rangewater. We also roll out small surveys throughout the year as needed. One small example is our team actually rolls out our on-site team uniform program. And we were getting a lot of feedback on that. So we thought, hey, let's send out a survey. We went ahead and did that. and got a huge response, and we're able to make some changes and adjustments for the next season. So we love to do that for all different ways and specific instances. We'll form, committees or task forces if needed. For example, during COVID, that was huge, and really got us through that tough time. We've had book clubs, like different things like that. So.
No, those are all great things. Jen, you said you've been with Rangewater for 11 years.
Yes, I
Did you
have.
start when you were 10? Because you only look like you're about 22.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you.
I mean, but I mean, that's in this industry. I know 11 years, it back then, it sounded like a long time. Now, when you hear somebody say that they work at the same company, especially in our industry, ladies, like let's be honest, for 11 years, that's they have retired, got their pension, and started all over again, because that is a long time for our industry. So that speaks volume about Rangewater and about the company culture, the brand, the data, putting the surveys out there, and really listening to the employees that you're still there after 11 years and you're still happy about it. And even with my friend Eddie Perez, I mean, I know that Eddie has a balanced life with his beautiful family. He loves what he does at Rangewater, and he's also a leadership with me in the Next Gen committee, and he's able to show that commitment. So that speaks volume. So shout out to you, Rangewater, and whoever is in charge over there, because y'all are doing some great things for the people. Before we move on to the next one, we have Marcy French on here. She said, "Tell them, Coach." Tiana is saying, "This is awesome. So many great comments. The people are in here and they're loving the conversation." Our next question is going to go to Jen. And I think we're going to ask one more question to each lady, and then we will kind of start to wrap it up, ladies. So, Jen, I'm sorry. How can multifamily companies use data to tailor their employee benefits and perks to better meet the needs of their workforce?
Oh man, this is one where I could talk literally for a couple hours on, so I'm going to try and keep it really short. This topic, benefits, is the biggest challenge in our industry this year. Typically, whenever I work with a client, we'll talk about what are your top 5 strengths, what are your top 5 opportunities. This year, benefits is in the top 5 opportunities for more than 90% of the industry, whereas in previous years, it was maybe there half the time. So that is a big, big challenge for everyone right now. So I would say, look at your participation rates and all your different benefits. Health insurance, oh my gosh, this is such a challenge for families right now. There are many companies who may pay for a bulk or the premiums for 100% of the employee only, but then for a spouse or for a family, it can be $500, $600, $700, $2,000 a month to add your family onto your healthcare. If I'm a maintenance tech, it's a choice between paying for groceries or paying for insurance. What am I going to do? And so look at the participation rate in all your different benefits. If you have a really low participation rate, particularly in insurance, take a look. What can you do? How can you get creative? How can you make it accessible to your team? But the other part is just, again, gather the data. Ask, what are the benefits? What are the perks that are most important to you, most valuable to you, most motivating to you as an employee? And see what you can do, because your team members, they're going to let you know. And not every employee is the same. Not every region of the country is the same, to Melissa's point. But start with that participation, because if people are not participating, it's no longer a benefit. And in fact, something that's being presented as a benefit, but it's inaccessible to me as an employee, now becomes something that I'm getting a little ticked off about. And it's working against you rather than in your favor.
I love it. Gather the data, as Jen would say. All right, let's wrap it on up. Melissa, the next question. Oh, I'm sorry. The next question is for you. What are some common challenges multifamily companies face when implementing DEI initiatives, and how can they overcome these obstacles?
Well, I guess when it comes to the number one challenges that I've seen or trends I've seen, I'll remind us as an industry that 76% of employees still say, even after years of this being top of mind for DEI, that job seekers say diversity is important when considering a job offer. That's 76%. Okay. So the biggest mistake we're making is not putting that top of mind when we're having this conversation and when we are putting together the job openings and job descriptions. Also assessing current culture and the climate of if you're prepared for implementation. Really take the time to lay the groundwork and have those benchmarks and metrics in place. It's not something to be rushed. I think we've learned that now over the last 3 or 4 years that, and I've worked with clients when we consult with DEI and come in and they have attempted it, but there have been a lapse in communication. There may have been some false starts with initiatives that they were well-meaning about, but they didn't have the depth to carry through because they realized DEI is so broad. Maybe we need to take a fraction or piece of that and then go deeper on it instead of why trying to do everything. So focusing on that from a data-driven standpoint, Jen. Also, the last thing I'll say so we can wrap up is, like I said, trying to just do it all at once. Work with consultants before rolling out the initiative, and don't feel so pressed to try to cover everything. Pick something that works for the culture that you've established.
Awesome. And last but not least, Alex, we want you to leave us with our final thoughts. And the last question for today is, can you discuss any mentorship or professional development programs your company offers and their impact on retention? And we have 2 minutes for you.
I will make it real quick. I think, myself as a great example, as I said before, I've been with Rangewater for 11 years. I started, right out of college as a leasing consultant, had no idea what industry I was getting into, but moved on up to assistant manager, property manager. I was a property manager for 6 years, then transitioned to our recruiting team and now director of talent acquisition. And I would say what really got me to this last role or this recent role as we, rolled out a leadership series, which was huge. And that really prepared me to step into this director level. So we've done all different types of amazing training opportunities along the way, but right now we've hired some amazing team members on in the past year to really help define career pathing and succession planning for us as an organization at all levels. So super excited for those to come. And thank you guys for letting me close this out. I don't want us to run over on time.
Yes, no, thank you
amazing.
so much for joining us. NAA, thank you for hosting today. Jen Picotti, thank you for being on the panel. Alex Fortune and Melissa D. White, Stephanie Hurst, and the entire Next Gen committee. Thank you guys so much, and you all have an amazing rest of the day.